Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming along tonight. Before we get started, I just want to introduce myself. My name's Bromwich. I've lived in the constituency all my life, born and raised. And tonight, really, it's about why George is the best candidate for West Bromwich East. But before we start, I just want to touch on the fact of what a mess our national politics is in. Okay? Up and down the constituency, all across Britain, there's one or two choices, and that is to vote for Jeremy Corbyn or to vote for Boris Johnson. Now, it's either to get Brexit done or to overspend. But in West Bromwich, we have a unique opportunity because we don't have to vote for one of the two main parties. We have a unique candidate who supports Brexit, but he's from a working class background. Okay, so he's here to represent us. For me, it's a blessing. I mean, we've had years and years of Tom Watson just stuck in the seat. Not mattering how many times we tried to remove him, he's always just hung on and hung on and hung on. George was only here, I think, a day or two, and he did a runner before we even started. Which has left an open seat. The only problem that we have is Labour have come and parachuted a candidate from London, the current Mayor of Lambeth, who is a kebab shop tycoon, multi-millionaire. We had a few canvassers knocking the door the other day who tried to push the fact that they're true socialists on us and that they represent the working class. But what we know from the Labour Party, since it was hijacked by Tony Blair, is actually it's become a middle class party. Yeah. They've ignored us. They don't want to represent us. Every time they've gone to the House of Parliament, especially for West Brom, they've pushed their own agenda and not that of the people who elected them. But then on the other hand, in West Bromwich East, we have the Tories, who personally I haven't seen one canvasser or one representative for years. Why have they just suddenly started? They've had thousands and thousands of pounds in the bank for years, but they've never bothered to spend a penny of it until now. So it's time to put the party policies to one side and look at the best candidate. And for me, that is George Galloway. Okay, it might not be, and one of the common things that I have is that, oh, George isn't from the area. He's not from the area. But actually, we only have one candidate who is, and that's a Tory who has no interest in representing the people. Okay, he might not be from our area, but he understands what it's like to live in an area like ours. We've seen the industries ripped and stripped from underneath our feet. In West Bromwich, is there anything left? I mean, you look at the Black Country and the history behind the Black Country. How much of that industry have we got left here?
Not at all.
None.
No, it's gone.
Virtually nothing. And that's the same as where George was from, in Scotland. So he understands what it's like. He understands what it's like to have a council that are pressured by the MP, that have got the cuts and everything else that comes with that. But it's not just down to the MP, it's down to the councillors as well, who have also failed to represent its people. And that is why we need real change. And that change starts with George. So if you really want to put the country first, but not just that, our constituency first, please, please vote for George Galloway. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Callum. May I say, as I've said to you privately, you're the most impressive 23-year-old I've met since I was 23.
He's funny, isn't he?
Absolutely terrific introduction, and I'm grateful for it and for everything that you said. I'm very grateful to all of you who have come in this shocking weather. We better get used to that. It's going to be like this all the way up to polling day, but we've come to show your interest in this general election. I said my piece here on this platform a week past Friday. It's still available on YouTube. I shan't repeat most of the things that I said then. you're welcome to consult that video on my YouTube channel, George Galloway Official. I'm rather going to update the audience, both here in the room and very large audience, I hope, of thousands watching the live stream, about how I see the general election and the great issues that are being played out now on the national and the local stage, and then take your questions and answers. So in short, I'll speak for less time than I did last time, but spend more time answering your questions, which will not be happening right now in Sheffield, where most of the party leaders will be avoiding the big questions on the BBC Question Time panel. Now, as you said, although it was more than a couple of days, I've actually been campaigning here for some months. It's true I'm not from the area, but I'm from much nearer than the Labour candidate, Ibrahim Douglas. He's from Kurdistan. I'm from Scotland. He's the mayor of Lambeth, and I was here quite a bit before him. But we celebrated the fact that on day one of the election, Tom Watson, who I believed had to be removed for the sake of the working class, for the sake of democracy, ran away before the first whiff of grape shot. He ran away just as we were moving our guns onto the field. Sing hallelujah. He's gone. He's gone to be a fitness instructor, if you'll believe that. I wouldn't go to his class. I don't know who will. And I don't know if I believe it. I don't know if we know the full facts behind the dramatic withdrawal on the first day of the election campaign of the Labour Party's deputy leader. Now, as I said last time, I've already defeated a fat deputy leader of the Labour Party, Roy Jenkins, another EU fanatic. I defeated him in 1987, and I'm marking up on my blackboard that I defeated Tom Watson here in West Bromwich East, because he has indeed run away. I'd like to know, and if I'm elected, trust me, I will be asking, what happened to all the money? What happened to the £500,000 Tom Watson got from the son of Adolf Hitler's Gauleiter, Sir Oswald Mosley, the leader of the British Union of Fascists? What happened to that money? I think we should be told, as they used to say, in private eye. And I'll be asking the parliamentary authorities about that if I get the chance. But we've turned a page. Watson is no more. Now, from this platform last time, a week past Friday, I asked you to look up in the sky and spot the parachute that was going to drop that weekend. I said to you, you'll be astounded by who's on the end of that parachute. But I had no idea that the parachutist would be quite so astounding as the multi-millionaire kebab king Ibrahim Douglas. He's astounding in many ways. First of all, because he tried to be the MP for Birmingham Hall Green just the day before. And he gave a speech as to how he'd be perfect as the Member of Parliament for Hall Green, and made the same speech literally the next day about how he'd be perfect as the Member of Parliament for West Bromwich East. Not only that, a few weeks before, he told the people in Vauxhall that he'd be the perfect MP in Vauxhall. In 1 month, he was in 3 constituencies, telling them all how local he was, what deep connections he had, how he had a grandmother from that very area, and all the usual spin. But he was successful on the last occasion, unfortunately for the people of West Bromwich East. Largely because the only other person in the race, another London Labour councillor, was persuaded at the last second to withdraw. And the next night we discovered how she was persuaded. Because she's popped up as the imposed Labour candidate in Leicester East, the seat of the disgraced Keith Baz, who, by the way, still sits on the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party, having been expelled from Parliament for 6 months for the sordid affair that I needn't dwell on with children present. What a corrupt bunch of coconuts these people are. Really. This is supposed to be the Labour Party. How can a multi-millionaire kebab king be a Labour candidate when, first of all, he pays his staff several pounds short of the London living wage that the Labour Party is demanding everybody else pay their workers? And we've got a pay slip, admittedly from a couple of years ago, from one of his workers, published online. That worker was on £3.87 an hour. £3.87, which turns out, of course, to be the very legal minimum that you can pay a young worker. Although Labour denounces the system by which young workers can be paid less than older workers. So Labour demands a London living wage of £10 an hour. In fact, they have done for several years. And they denounce the practice of being legally allowed to pay young workers such poverty pay. So the Labour candidate, the man that wants to represent this working men's club, this working class community, has chosen a multi-millionaire whose millions are based on, in part, the sweated labour of his own workforce. What kind of Labour Party is this? If you thought it couldn't get any worse than Tom Watson, well, it just got worse. Now, I tell you something. If he gets in here, he will misrepresent you even more badly than Tom Watson misrepresented you. But let's start with the first of the issues on which he will misrepresent you. In this chain of multi-millionaire restaurants, they print receipts when you pay your bill. What does it say on the receipt? It says Brexit is evil. Well, that's a new one. You've come to stand in a constituency that voted overwhelmingly for Brexit, which you declare to every customer on their receipt is evil. What madness is this? This is a man on the make. This is a man on the make in business, a man on the make in politics. He's parachuted in here hoping that people like sheep will go out to vote for him. And I believe that we have to prove him wrong. And here's the bad news, Mr. Bogus. Here's the bad news. I have not met one single person. Not one single person. Jennifer is my judge. She's with me all day. on the campaign trail, speaking to hundreds of people a day. I have not met one person who has declared that they're intending to vote for him. And in fact, most of them are absolutely horrified that that's the Labour choice that's being offered to them in this constituency. He'll misrepresent you because he has nothing in common with you. He has no interests in common with you. What's he going to do? Vote for a significant increase in the national minimum wage? Is he going to vote to abolish the young person's minimum wage? Is he going to implement the Brexit decision that you made and have stuck to? At least 7 out of 10 people that we speak to are determined that this Brexit must be implemented. Yeah. Well, if you're determined that Brexit's going to be implemented, you better not elect a guy that tells every customer in his restaurants that what you voted for is evil. I could, if I wanted to be unkind, make a logical extension. If Brexit is evil and you're Brexit, does that make you evil?
Yep.
In which case, if he thinks you're evil and you vote for him anyway, well, frankly, you'll deserve the misrepresentation that you are going to get. Now, it's true that there's a kind of local. She's not actually from West Brom. Kind of local Conservative Party candidate. But not only have they not done anything for years, they haven't actually yet done anything in this campaign. We have not seen a single Conservative leaflet, poster, campaigner, nor hide nor hair of her. I don't know even what she looks like. Maybe she hasn't discovered social media yet. But I would have expected to see some sign of life from the Conservatives. But life, there is none. And there's a Liberal Democrat. They got 1.6% here last time. They have only one policy, and that's to scrap Brexit altogether.
Who are they?
To pretend that the referendum never happened, that the 17.4 million that voted to leave the EU are invisible, and imagine that they're going to take that lying down. Well, I'm not going to take it lying down, are you?
No.
No, certainly not.
Anyway, Joe Swinson has to be, surely, the worst party leader of a national party in all history. My wife's not here, so I can tell you what age I am. Joe Grimmond was the leader of the Liberal Democrats, or the Liberals,
Yes.
when I was first in politics. He was a grand figure. Even little Jeremy Thorpe, until he came a cropper, was quite ahead of his time, a bit of a mover and shaker. If they'd had Twitter then, he'd have been a king of Twitter, with the trilby and all. They had David Steele, another grandee. They had Charles Kennedy, a figure in the land. But it's been all downhill since. And they've reached surely the bottom of the hill with Joe Swinson.
They found the anthill.
The anthill. He's the king of the anthill. But seriously, she announced that she was going to be the Prime Minister. I mean, surely even her own family was laughing.
Especially.
That's what she announced. One of the great joys of the election campaign so far is, as the London Times put it, in sombre opinion poll language, the more people see of Joe Swinson, the less they like her. Mm-hmm. And the Liberal Democrat vote is going backwards at such a rate, they'll be lucky to hold the seats that they had when this Parliament that they did so much to wreck, so much to turn into nothing other than a block on the people's will, they'll be lucky to maintain the position they had before this general election happened. But one of the other joys, and this, after all my years in politics, you might reproach me, I had no idea that Boris Johnson was so bad. I thought, compared to Theresa May, he'd be barnstorming up and down the country. Had them rocking and rolling in the aisles in the TV studios. He's not even going to go in any more TV studios. He's so bad at what he does. Boris Johnson's campaign is so bad that the postal votes will be in the mail this weekend, tomorrow, and he hasn't even published a manifesto yet. I'll come to the Labour manifesto in a minute, of course. But that means that people are going to be actually filling out their ballot forms without knowing a single thing that Boris Johnson is promising to do. I've been fighting elections since 1964, and I have never known a party of government to run for office on a blank check, on a blind promissory note. And so again I say, if you vote for that, well, frankly, you'll deserve what you've got coming. Talk about buying a pig in a poke. I know he's not David Cameron, but to buy a pig in a poke off Boris Johnson, you really would need to be crazy.
Absolutely.
I've got a bridge I can sell you in London if you really think that that is a sensible or wise thing to do. And then there's Nigel Farage, who promised me, you're watching, Nigel, who promised me, solemn and binding, that he would not be standing a candidate against me in West Bromwich East. A promise that turned out not to be worth the paper it wasn't written on.
Yes.
And I don't know where they're standing, because it keeps changing. But, as a matter of fact, in the seats where they are standing, Labour-held seats, I still believe they're going to do better than the current national opinion polls indicate. And far from having 0 seats, as the professors tell us, I believe they will win seats in the general election. I'll give you some names. Write them down. I believe the Brexit Party will win in Hartlepool. I believe the Brexit Party will win in Hull. I believe they'll win seats in the northeast. And I believe they'll win seats in the northwest outside of the city of Manchester. Why? Because Labour has completely lost touch with its heartlands. Labour has completely lost touch with the millions of working class, blue collar people that stood with them through thick and thin and for decades, for 100 years. Communities, people, families, even in places like Bolsover. Dennis Skinner could lose his seat. I hope he doesn't, but the opinion polls there are mighty close. And that is what I want the main burden of my remarks to be. Because the story I'm trying to tell, a story of Tom Watson's and Ibrahim Bogus's and second referendums and betrayal of the 2017 election manifesto commitment to respect and implement the Brexit referendum result, has left Labour as a metropolitan, university-educated, middle-class outfit, more concerned with sexual and gender and racial politics than with the politics of class. And the workers know it. The workers look at Don Butler in a video this week in Parliament with the grinning Thornberry Lady Nuggie. Not making that up, that's her real name. Lady Nuggie laughing while Don Butler says, if you don't hate Brexit, there's something wrong with you. Something wrong with 17.4 million people, 5 million of whom are her own party's voters. Spread across all the seats in the West Midlands, East Midlands, North West, North East, South Wales, that Labour now stands in real danger of losing. But she wasn't shy. She knew there was a camera there. She said it. In fact, it'd be better keeping her off the TV. She had a Diane Abbott nightmare on LBC this week. She claimed that there were 3,000 rough sleepers in her constituency. And Ferrari said, but there's only 4,000 rough sleepers in the whole of the United Kingdom. Are you really saying that 3,000 out of 4,000 are all coming to sleep rough in your constituency? Oops. And she said, well, maybe I got that number wrong. Maybe it's 300. 300, 3,000. Not much difference. Just one knot. And then, of course, Ferrari and his right-wing gang at LBC are talking in Ferrari's ear and gave him the actual number, which is not 3,000, not 300, but 30. Now, a Labour frontbencher that doesn't know the difference between 30 and 3,000 is, I hope she doesn't end up as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Which leads me to their manifesto. Of course, there are many things in the Labour manifesto that I support and that would be good things. And I'll deal with some of them. My problem is believability. My problem is, are you sure you haven't got those numbers mixed up, like Don Butler? Are you sure you're going to build 1 million council houses? Because you've been running Wales for the last 20 years, and you only built 47 there last year. 47. So are you sure you're going to do this? Are you sure you priced it properly? But if I believed that they were going to do it, and they had priced it properly, of course. As someone who was born in a slum and then grew up in a council house, I'd walk to John O'Groats to see 1 million council houses. Nothing could be a more positive contribution to Britain than 1 million council houses.
Walk to Venezuela, George.
For lots of reasons. First of all, the 3,000 rough sleepers in Don Butler's constituency could all get a house, but joking apart, it would, at a stroke, make a huge dent in the housing crisis in this country. People unable to afford to buy inflated priced houses, people having to rent in a private sector where many, maybe most, of the landlords don't give a toss about the property and its condition, care only about the spondulics at the end of the month. Ruthless private landlords. They'd go out of business at a stroke. Does Bogus own any flats that he rents out? Oh, there you go. There, I'm onto something. Well done.
Well, he owns one that he rents for 5,000 a month.
Oh, there you go. The Labour candidate for West Bromwich East owns a flat that he rents out for £5,000 a month. Nice work, if you can get it. So 1 million council houses would knock the legs from unscrupulous private landlordism, bring down the cost of houses to buy, which we desperately need in this country if anyone on normal wages, any man and wife on normal wages, to aspire to buy in many parts of the country is simply impossible. And it would replace decaying, often unlettable, council properties that have been left to rot by councils that either could not or would not properly maintain them. So I'm all for your 1 million houses over the lifetime of this Parliament, more than 100,000 houses a year, for those reasons. But there's other reasons too. You see, the difference between spending and investing is being deliberately obfuscated by the mass media response in the last 48 hours. If I blow £1,000, God forbid you will ever find me in a casino, but if I blow £1,000 in a casino, I've spent it. But if I invest £1,000 in, say, insulating my house, saving energy bills, saving damage to the planet, that's not the same thing as blowing it in a casino. That's investment, not spending. If I borrow £100 million and spend it in making our hospitals fit for purpose, stopping the closure of fire stations and police stations and all the public services that have been devastated, I'm investing in the community, investing in society. Well, if you build 1 million council houses, you're not just investing in the roofs that families will then have over their heads. You're investing in work for hundreds of thousands of building trade workers who earn the money to build those houses. And moreover, those building workers will spend their wages in the local community. They're not going to buy a yacht in Saint-Tropez. They're going to spend it in Abdul's shop on the corner, in the restaurants, on the taxis. They're going to spend that money locally, boosting the local economy. And of course, the materials with which they're building, the bricks, the mortar, the wood, the glass, the steel, the iron, that's all got to be produced. And we got to ensure that it's produced here, in Britain, so that our workers can benefit from the investments being made by their money. That's not rocket science, is it? 1 million council houses, paid for by the taxpayer. The taxpayer needs to get something back, and that's how you do it now. Sorry to digress, but that's one of the reasons why we need to leave the European Union. Because if you don't leave the European Union, you're not allowed to decide that all the steel will come from here. All the materials will have to be purchased from here. You're not allowed to do that. You've got to open it up to competitive, compulsory tendering, where any joker dumping any level of quality of materials has the right to bid for the job. Of course I'm in favour of Corbyn's policy to employ more doctors and nurses and train our own people to be doctors and nurses. I said something in the week, it turned out to be controversial in some quarters. There is nothing left-wing about mass immigration. Neither for the country that you are stripping of their best and brightest, youngest workers, nor for the workers that are already here. And lo and behold, a day later, Romania publishes figures which show the devastation in the Romanian health service caused by the fact that huge numbers of their young people, nurses, technicians, dentists, opticians, doctors, are here, are in Germany, in rich countries, making the rich countries richer, while their own country gets poorer. Well, I hope I don't have to say here, there's nothing racist about that point, apart from anything else. Nearly everybody in Romania is white. So this is not a racial point, it's a workers' point.
Yes.
We want the workers in Romania to flourish and thrive because we love them, because we want to sell them things which we can't sell them if they've got no money. We want to go on holiday there. I speak, by the way, as the only candidate in this election with a book published in Romania. That's true. And we want them to be able to come on holiday here. And so, if there's going to be vacancies in any sector, we have to make sure, number one, that our young people are properly trained to do those jobs. And number two, that those jobs pay decent wages so that the workers have a job working in. I'm not happy about many things in Corbyn's manifesto, apart from the believability point. He has reiterated in this manifesto his absolute commitment to continuing to develop the Trident nuclear weapons fleet. This is a total waste of money. As admirals of the fleet, generals of the armed forces, air marshals have all already said, this Trident, which is not independent, which requires the United States to fire it, is a complete waste of money. We'd be better spending that money or a part of it in a proper defense of our country, paying our soldiers properly, equipping our soldiers properly, housing our soldiers properly, having aircraft to put on the back of our aircraft carriers. That would be a decent start. Building our own frigates to protect our shore and our border. This is not a pacifist point I'm making. I'm the least pacifist person you've ever met. I'll go 5 rounds with anybody and I'm 65 years old. I'm not a pacifist. I'm against these nuclear weapons because they don't work. They're no use. They don't defend us from any conceivable threat that we might now or in the future face. And above all, Mr. Corbyn, I can't support your manifesto because of the betrayal of Brexit writ large within it.
Yes.
Your policy on Brexit, in which I am certain that you don't believe, is the product of the blackmail and browbeating of the likes of Tom Watson and his gang, who put both arms up your back, broke both your ankles, and forced you into accepting. And if you'd stuck to the promise you made in 2017, which won you 40% of the vote, if you'd stuck to that, if you'd told Watson and co. to get lost, Labour had stood in 2017, had scored the biggest increase in the Labour vote since 1945. If you'd stuck to that, you'd already be on the threshold of 10 Downing Street. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's time now for you to ask any questions that you want to put forth to George. Does anyone want to start us off? Any questions? Questions, anyone? Just pop your hand up. Yeah.
Right. You spoke about the young people, George, about jobs and that, which I, and the training for them, which I agree with wholeheartedly. But the government are talking about putting the retirement age to the age 70. So what about the investment in the over 50s? Because employers don't want to invest in the over 50s anymore. They could have another 20 years working life because they're not allowed to retire.
Well, there's some jobs, mine, which are perfectly possible for a 70-year-old. I intend to do this job if I'm elected till I'm 70. And even then I would retire. But anybody fancy being rescued by a 70-year-old firefighter? Anybody fancy a 70-year-old copper coming to their rescue when they're getting rumbled in the street by a mugger? Anybody seriously asking a 70-year-old woman to lug things around in the care system, for example, to be lifting people up, moving them, shifting them, cleaning them? This is absurd. When we've got young people unemployed, you're going to keep elderly people at work? This is a madness. And I'm going off script here. There are several things that if I was writing Corbyn's manifesto, I would have written differently, I would have done differently. I would have said, the balance is not quite right here between students and pensioners. You're going to spend X billions on students. What are you going to spend on the pensioners? Shouldn't you maybe give the pensioners a little bit of what you're offering to give the students? I would have done it that way. I would have preferred, Jyoti, it was your point the other day, I would have preferred free water than some of the other commitments of expenditures that Corbyn has made. But that's at the margin. I want justice for the pensioners. I want people to be able to retire at an age where they can then enjoy, as was once the case, a dignified retirement in a Derby and Jones somewhere, hand in hand with their wife, that it ought to be something to look forward to. Not having to go to work every day, but you can't do that if you're actually facing pensioner poverty, fuel poverty, choosing between food and warmth. So, in addition to that, I don't know if you're aware of this WASPy campaign. I've been strongly supporting it for the last few years. People, women, who were promised a retirement age, suddenly had it unilaterally extended by 7 years. So lives that had been planned, budgets that had been made, had to be ripped up willy-nilly. And people that had planned their retirement with their partners, maybe even planned to go and live in the Costa del Sol, maybe. Now they've got to go continue at work when younger workers are either unemployed or underemployed. This is a twisted sense of priorities. And if I'm in Parliament, you can be sure I'll be fighting it.
Anybody else? Yes, the gentleman.
You'll forgive me for quoting Boris Johnson, but once we get Brexit done, how do you see Europe? I can't imagine that the French and the Germans will take this lying down, because you can imagine there's a movement within France where they want their Brexit.
Yeah.
And I think the Germans are also pretty much keen to go their way as well. I mean, how do you see the EU actually holding together?
I really don't. I really think that the European Union is doomed in the form that we know it. First, on the philosophical level, you cannot not have a multinational, supranational state without democracy. And you can't have it with democracy. You can't have a democratic decision, for example, in a nation, a union of 28 nation states, that, well, Bulgaria is so poor, we're going to start spending all our money in Bulgaria, because the other nation states will say no. Because their voters will say no. So you can't have it with democracy, and you certainly can't have it without democracy, because we are effectively ruled. People don't like to hear this. I'm not talking about bent bananas. I'm talking about the main economic and fiscal rules by which we must govern are dictated by people whose names we don't know, and if we saw them on a piece of paper, we couldn't pronounce them. More importantly, we didn't elect them, and we cannot remove them. Nobody's going to put up with that. And Britain is just the first greyhound out the trap on this. Macron was very clear that if the French people were offered a similar referendum to ours, they too would vote to leave the European Union. And then he added, which is why, of course, I will never give them such a referendum. They're such Democrats, these Euro leaders, I must say. Germany has no need to leave the European Union because Germany is running the European Union. Germany runs the European Union in its own image, in its own interests. It orders the division of labour, if you like, within the big three, Germany, France and Britain, and uses the labour of the poorer countries of Europe to fuel its own economic development and activity. And of course German people are very clever and very hard-working people. They've built something really to be proud of in Germany. It's a wonderful country. They are a wonderful people. I have nothing at all against them. I just don't want to be ruled by them. I just don't want to have my economy skewed by them. Because it's at their diktat that Britain became, of course the bankers loved it anyway, that Britain became little more than a casino economy in the square mile in the city of London. So Germany does the manufacturing, we do the finance, France does a bit of manufacturing, a little bit of finance, and a lot of agriculture. That's us all sorted. Well, that's not much good in West Brom. There's nothing much to do in the casino economy if you're living here. So I don't think it can hold. I don't think it will hold. I don't think it deserves to hold.
One of Jeremy Corbyn's pledges has been about putting so many more buses back on the road, and the media's made a lot about Corbyn's plan to nationalise bus services and for councils to take them back into public ownership, which I'm not opposed to. But what I want to point out is that I wouldn't trust the Labour Party with a nationalised bus service, let alone Labour councils with a nationalised bus service. In Birmingham, the Labour Council and Labour councillors who sit on the body which looks after all transport in the West Midlands, those councillors have proposed and are backing a scheme to criminalise children who skip the bus fare. Now sure, you should pay, your mum tells you to pay when you get on the bus when you're a kid, but kids will be kids, and a lot of kids in this area, across the whole West Midlands, genuinely are so poor they can't afford a bus ticket. When I was a kid, and I think it's the same for most kids around in the West Midlands, your mate had the ticket, and as he got on, he passed it back to you, and you used it, and when you flashed it, you passed it back, and the next kid, and you all get on the bus with one ticket. You know, you didn't do it because you were like budding criminals. You did it because, you know, you only had £3 between you. And if you got caught, you took the consequences, a 10 quid fine or whatever it was a civil offence. Labour politicians in the West Midlands, being led by the Labour Party in Birmingham, are introducing what's called bus bylaws. And these bus bylaws are going to give them the power to criminalise kids for jumping the bus and not paying for a bus ticket. So they're going to take kids, you know, adolescents who can barely afford to get around and drag them in front of the magistrates, wasting the time of the courts and criminalising kids for something which is a petty offence. I'm in favour of the campaign which we've been running across the whole West Midlands, but particularly in Birmingham, that rather than worrying about nationalising the bus service, and if it can be done properly, great, but rather than worrying about that, why don't we make bus travel free for all the kids across the West Midlands? They already pay out of the public purse to the private bus companies 7.2 million to bus companies which are making millions of pounds in profit in the West Midlands, National Express buses in particular. They pay them 7.2 million from the public purse to fund a half-price bus ticket. Now, they can spend billions on HS2, Crossrail in London and all the rest of it, but for a paltry 7.2 million additional more, which they've got in their budget, they could get rid of any need to criminalise kids. They can get rid of all the inspectors and all the police support which goes into dragging kids off the bus to penalise them for having skipped a fare. And every kid under the age of 60 can get on and off as they please. They can get themselves to job interviews. They can get themselves to work. There's no need for a special pass. There's no need to get yourself in trouble. And I'd like to know, George, you know, is that the sort of thing you would stand for?
Fantastic. I couldn't put it better than that. You've summed it up perfectly. I'd only accentuate 2 points, 3. First of all, I wouldn't trust Sandwell Council to run a jumble sale, never mind a bus service. Labour councils I've ever known to run the bus service. So if that's what Corbyn means by nationalisation, that's not good enough. Secondly, the kids in London can go free, why can't the kids in the West Midlands? It's not rocket science. If it's the right thing to do in London, it's the right thing to do in the West Midlands. And I want to say I completely support your campaign for free bus travel for kids in the West Midlands. But thirdly, do you know that the police force in the West Midlands is smaller today than it was in 1974? Although the population has grown, the crime rate has multiplied, and you're going to put the police onto the buses to catch a 15-year-old kid dodging their fare? Are you serious? Don't you think the police severely reduced in number, the police station sold for a kebab shop? As a thought, that police station in Dudley, it's up for sale. Does Ibrahim Bogus know yet? There's another kebab shop. They've shut the stations, reduced the officers, dealing with more crime, more people, and now you're going to give them another job, hunting school children for a criminal offence. Crazy.
Can I just add to that, George? We know there's no justice for the poor anyway. We know the courts are only there for the poor.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely right.
Keep the advocates in work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I know that you could
Yeah.
point first.
Thank you. So, my name is Jürgen, and this is my wife Sabine, and we are from Germany.
Ah,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I hope you didn't take offence.
So, we are members of the Marxist-Leninist Party in Germany, and we are very glad to be here to have an original glimpse on the Brexit discussion and so on. And you must know that in Germany, the media try to tell that the people that are for Brexit are part of the mass base of ultra-reactionary parties, you know, that's what they try to...
They tell us too that we're all racists.
Yeah, okay. So we are not, we realize that this is a fight for your rights as workers and as for the women and so on. And the MLPD also fundamentally rejects the EU as an alliance of imperialist powers, and accordingly put out the slogan for the last European elections: rebellion against the EU is justified. That's what we do. And one of our reasons for this slogan is that we must not leave criticism of the EU to ultra-right wingers and fascists.
Yeah.
So we feel close to you and your fight, and we think this is an anti-imperialism fight, and we must work together. The working class in Germany, the working class in Great Britain must work together. You are not ruled by the German people, you are ruled by the German imperialism, and so this we have to fight, and we are, I say it again, we are very happy to be here, and we wish you succeed in your campaign, and also that you can use it to organize your and strengthen your power. Thank you.
If I'd known you were here, I would have put it slightly differently. So.
Never mind, we didn't understand all the details.
Lost in translation. Of course, I can't tell you how welcome you are, and your contribution was, and that that there are German working class activists in our midst is our honour. And of course, the crimes of the German ruling elite are not the responsibility of the German people, and the crimes of the British elite are not the responsibility of the people here. We have a common adversary. And that adversary is the unfair, unjust, incompetent, doomed political and economic system under which both of our countries, both of our peoples live. But for the meantime, in the short term, we insist on our democratic decision to leave the EU being implemented. Both because it's the right decision for the working class, but even if I took a different view on that. If democracy is to mean anything, it has to mean that when you vote for something, you get it. If you tell people the final decision is yours, and 17.5 million people vote for it, the biggest vote forever, for anything, anyone, ever in Britain, and then you tell them, actually, you didn't vote the right way, so we're just going to ignore it. That is a very, very dangerous path. And nobody knows better than the people of Germany the kind of path that can turn into. This race point, perhaps I didn't deal with it at enough length. As Jyoti said, they call us racists. I have an Indonesian wife, I have 4 mixed race children, I have represented more people of colour in the British Parliament over 30 years than any MP in history. And I like to think that most people of colour in this constituency will support me because of my record. The idea that someone like me can be a racist is so absurd. It ceases even to be offensive and becomes only ridiculous. Quite apart from the fact that nearly everybody in the EU is white like me, quite apart from the fact that the EU locks out the rest of the world, locks out the products and the workers and the people of the rest of the world. Quite apart from the fact the EU just withdrew the naval assets from the Mediterranean, allowing people fleeing from Africa through the blown open doors of Libya, allowing them to die in the Mediterranean. The EU, an bastion of anti-racism, don't make me laugh.
Most parents, when their children get to sort of 17, the thing to do, they've got to go to university. So many of them study things that are of no use to anybody and end up doing all the jobs. There is this idea that everybody's got to go to university. And where are we? All these houses that we want to build, we haven't got anything like enough bricklayers. Why couldn't, and I think Germany is much better at this, incidentally, than us, I think. Why can't there be, why does it have to be considered second rate if you don't go to university to do an apprenticeship? Because we need, these are the people we need. Of course we need some people to get the technical, the university type jobs. And when we look at the cost of universities, the figure is absolutely massive, and you know, the sort of top person getting 200,000 or 300,000 or more, it's all out of balance, isn't it?
Well, I so strongly agree with you for lots of reasons, and I touched on it earlier when I spoke about the Labour manifesto. As I said here last time, I never went to university. I left school at 16. I became an engineering worker in Michelin tires. I never regretted it. In fact, the more university people I met in my life, I consider it a narrow escape.
Yes.
When I see how these university Johnnies have destroyed the country, I realise that it's not necessarily automatically a good thing that we spent so much money educating Tom Watson, not to even get a degree. So I worked all my life from the age of 16 until now. I've never even stopped to count how much tax I've paid in that period to pay for the education of some of the worst people in the country. If I did stop to calculate it, it might be disappointing. But I'll tell you an anecdote. As you know, I spent almost 30 years in the British Parliament, and one of my constituencies was in East London when the London Olympic Stadium was being built. And Tessa Jowell, the late Tessa Jowell, was the Minister for the Olympics. I demanded a meeting with her. I went into her ministerial suite and I read the Riot Act, that not a single tradesman in my constituency was working on the Olympic Stadium just a mile down the road, and that all the workers there seemed to have come from Poland and former socialist countries in Eastern Europe. What about the workers, I said, in the East End of London? And she told me, with the documents in front of her, there's none of your constituents applied for a job because there aren't bricklayers, joiners, steel workers, fitters. There aren't glaziers in East London. And so we have had to take labour for the stadium from Eastern Europe. And that, she wasn't lying. She may have lied about other things, I don't know, but she wasn't lying about that. She had looked into it because she knew what I was coming to see her about. And it struck me then that if that's the truth, we've got a serious problem here in this country.
Absolutely.
Because if after Brexit there will be no further large-scale influxes of skilled labour from these former socialist countries, well, we're going to have to fill that gap ourselves. So we better get started. When I hear people say there's nobody to pick the plums in Kent, they're all rotting in the fields, well, we better start paying the plum pickers
Yes.
a decent wage so that the workers can go and it'd be worth their while taking these things. So we need a big change
Yes.
in how we do
Absolutely.
things. And one of those changes is to stop fetishizing two things.
Yes.
Fetishizing home ownership.
Yes. Yes.
I don't own my own home. I'm a tenant. What's wrong with that? Why should that be shameful? It's like Mrs. Thatcher. Remember when she said you could count yourself a failure in life if by the age of 30 you're still travelling on the bus. The same kind of mentality about renting.
Yes.
But in France, nearly everybody rents.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with renting. And it's this fetishizing of property ownership. Of course, you don't own it anyway. The building society owns it.
Yes.
The bank owns it. Until you're old. This fetish has to end. And so does the fetish of sending half of our people to ultra expensive university education to learn things for which neither they nor us really have any use. We need to dramatically improve and increase the prestige of being a tradesman or a tradeswoman.
Absolutely.
There ought to be something, instead of saying, I was at the University of Oxford and I learned, I don't know, the sociology of guinea pigs.
Yes.
To be able to go into company and say, I'm a steel worker, I'm a carpenter,
Yeah.
I'm a bricklayer, I make things. I take raw materials and I make things. That ought to get a round of applause.
Absolutely.
That's what we need.
Absolutely.
An appreciation. An appreciation of our workers. The people who by hand and by brain make the things and do the things that make our country better. That's my view. Maybe one more? Is there one more? More?
Could I just ask our German friend here, am I right in saying that there is much more interest in the practical skills in carpentry and in Germany than there is in this country? I had been told, I don't know whether it's true, maybe it's not.
I answer? I think not. It is not. There is not a big difference.
Not a big difference.
No.
We've all got work to do then.
That's what you said about the worth of hand work, craft work, industrial work. It is no. It is a lower worth in the than going studying and so on. And this is counts a lot of problem
Yes,
for the
yes.
people. You also have to pay if you go to the university in Germany.
It's stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Stupid.
I agree on what you said.
Absolutely.
You might get more people wanting to go into, I'm a bricklayer, you might get more people would go into bricklaying, carpentry and stuff if they were properly employed rather than
Of
being
course,
self-employed.
of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Precariously employed over
The
the
whole
years, in
system
and out
was-
of work,
Yeah.
rates
Make
go up,
full
rates go down.
Yeah.
Then after a recession you get labour drafted into the country to bring the rates down even
Yes.
further.
Exactly.
I know loads of people that have gone out of the trade over the years for
Yeah.
that very reason. And none of us would encourage our sons to go into the same trade, so
Yeah, no,
that needs to change.
absolutely.
We have one question from social media. It says, what does George think about the manifestos and which is the best one? And that's from Julian Harris on YouTube.
Well, the Conservatives don't have one. The Liberal Democrats are a joke. I prefer our manifesto here, the Brexit Independent Manifesto here in West Brom. Second best would be Corbyn's, with major caveats. That do us?
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Just a quick one. Before we go away tonight, if there's one little summary to take home with you, it'd be that we have that unique opportunity that I mentioned earlier. We can either vote for the traditional politics that we know and continue this downward spiral in which we're on, or we can elect an MP who will give the working class a real voice. So please vote for George Galloway and change West Bromwich East for the better. And if you are interested in coming, we're here every Friday night, and then next Tuesday at 7 o'clock at the Coach and Horses pub on Casteven Road on Hagley Heath, we'll be there as well. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
I'm Jennifer. Any volunteers, come and say hi and I'll sign you up for emails. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All good.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
No worries.
Cut!